All right, so in Parshas Yisro, page 394 in the article Chumash, right? 394 in the article Chumash, Parshas Yisro. So, Parshas Yisro is, of course, a very, very fundamental Parsha. It's the Parsha of Matan Torah, the revelation of Har Sinai, which is one of the foundations of our emunah, of our faith. Everything really that's relevant to our identity as Jewish people. Our practices, our mitzvahs, and so on, all have to do with the revelation of Har Sinai. But in the Parsha we read a couple of stories also. We first read about Yisro coming to convert, Yisro coming to the Midbar. Yisro was Moshe Rabbeinu's father-in-law, leaving his comfort of his home and all coming and joining Klal Yisrael, converting and joining the Torah and mitzvah system, which he appreciated. We'll soon talk later. Then we have, of course, the Matan Torah. Now the Matan Torah story is divided into two. It's divided into the preparation for Har Sinai, when the Jewish people arrive at Har Sinai and prepare. And then, of course, the actual Gilui, the actual revelation, which is the revelation of Matan Torah. And then at the end of the Parsha, we have a few other things like the laws of the Mizbeach and so on and so forth. Just to point out, the Meir HaShiloach, the Ishbitzer Rebbe says that why do we have Yisro's story? In fact, the whole Parsha is called Yisro, which is interesting. So why do we have Yisro's story before Matan Torah? So he says it's to teach us that just like Yisro, you had to give up everything really to come and join Klal Yisrael. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is sending us a message that in order to be given over to the Torah, we have to really give up. We can't have everything. In other words, to really be connected to Torah, we've got to give ourselves over to Hashem, to commit, and which often means letting go of other stuff and letting go of our involvement and focus with other things in order to really connect to Hashem and connect to the Torah. And that we learn from Yisro, who gave up his comfort and he came to join Klal Yisrael. So Yisro, what Yisro did in essence is a preparation for Matan Torah. Okay, let's have a look at a few psukim together. That's on page 394. So the pasuk says, "Vayishma Yisro." Yisro heard. Who was Yisro? He says the pasuk Kohen Midyan. He was the minister of Midyan. We'll see a little bit later exactly what that means. Chosein Moshe. He was the father-in-law of Moshe. Eskol Asher Asa Lakin Moshe. He heard everything that Hashem had done to Moshe, Uli Yisrael Amay, and to the Israelites, his nation. Ki hoitzi Hashem es Yisrael miMitzrayim, that Hashem had taken them out of Mitzrayim, and so on and so forth. So Vayikach Yisro, it says that Yisro took Chosein Moshe, again the father-in-law of Moshe, Tzipora Eshes Moshe, Tzipora the wife of Moshe, Achar Shiluchel, after she was sent away. Just to give you a background of that, we know what happened was when the Yidden were in Mitzrayim, so Moshe Rabbeinu had to run away from Mitzrayim. He got married in Midyan Tzipora, he had two sons, and then through the burning bush, Hashem sent him back to Mitzrayim to redeem the Jewish people. Initially what happened was, he took his wife and his two sons, and he was on the way back to Mitzrayim, and then as he was coming close to Mitzrayim, Aaron, his brother, came out to meet him, and asked him, who are this? He says, this is my wife and children. He says, Ala Rishonim onu Mitzrayim. We're having enough trouble with the Jews that are in Mitzrayim, with all their in slavery and so on and so forth. Why are you bringing more people? So he sent them back to his father-in-law, Yisro, and they stayed there until Yisro came and joined the Jewish people. It's not exactly 100% clear, by the way, when Yisro came. I mean, it looks like from Rashi that he came after Yom Kippur, which was a few months after Matan Torah, which is a fascinating concept. That means that Moshe Rabbeinu's wife and two sons missed the giving of the Torah. They actually weren't there, right? Which is quite amazing. Others say that came before Matan Torah, whatever the case is, but the story, the way we're reading it in the Pasuk here, this explains why Yisro was bringing Tzipora and her two sons. And it goes on to explain who the two sons were. V'eish Shnei Boneo, says the Psukim, the two sons. Ashashemu Echad Gershom. The name of the one of them was Gershom. Ki Omar Gerisi Beretz Nachriya, because he said, I was a ger, I was a stranger in a strange land. B'shem ha'echad Eliezer, the second one's name was Eliezer. Ki Elokei Avi be'ezri, because the God of my father came to my assistance. Vayatzileini michera paroi, and he saved me from the sword of Paroi. Now, Vayovo Yisro choisen Moshe. Yisro came. Who's Yisro again? The father-in-law of Moshe. One of Ishtel Moshe Lamidbar. They came to the desert. Ashur choinu shom har Elokim, where they were camping next to the mountain of God, next to Har Sinai. The next pasuk is also important. It says like this: Vayomer el Moshe. He sent him to Moshe. He sent a message to Moshe. Rashi says through a shliach. He sent a message to Moshe, the following message: Ani choisencha Yisro. I, your father-in-law, Yisro, ba'elecha, is coming to you. The ishtacha, and your wife, ushnei baneha ima, and her two sons with him. Vayetze Moshe likras choisnoi. So Moshe Rabbeinu came out to greet his father-in-law. Vayishtachu vayishakloi. He bowed down to him and he kissed him. Vayishalu ish l're'eyu l'shalom. They kissed each other for peace. Vayavei oyala, and they came to the tent. And then Moshe Rabbeinu elaborates and tells them all that happened to the Jewish people, all the wonderful miracles. And Yisro says, Baruch Hashem. He blesses Hashem. In fact, just have a look at that because it will be relevant a little bit later with discussion. Go to the next page. Right. So Yisro says, Vayomer Yisro, it's pasuk Yud, verse 10. Vayomer Yisro, Baruch Hashem, blessed be Hashem. I guess the first time in Chumash we have the phrase Baruch Hashem, right? Asher hitzil eschem miyad Mitzrayim, blessed be Hashem that He has saved you from Mitzrayim, miyad Paroi, from the hands of Paroi. Asher hitzil es ha'om, that He saved the nation mitachas yad Mitzrayim, from the hand of Mitzrayim. Ata yodaiti, now I know. Ki Godol Hashem mikol Elokim, that Hashem is the greatest of all the gods, and so on. Ki badover asher zodu aleim, everything that they wanted to do to the Jewish people happened to them, and they were punished, and Hashem was saved, and Yidden was saved, and so on and so forth. Okay. So, I'm going to share with you a general concept. Before I do that, I want to show you something on a pasuk, two things on a pasuk before. Go back to the first page, page 394, where again, we have this pasuk. Let's have a look at pasuk Vav, verse 6. Vayomer el Moshe, he said to Moshe, in other words, Yisro. After, by the way, we've heard almost 3 times here in the pasukim that Yisro was Moshe and his father-in-law, and he was coming, and he went to the desert, and so on and so forth. We have this pasuk which says, Vayomer el Moshe, he said to Moshe, Ani choisencha Yisro bo'elecha, I am your father-in-law, Yisro, coming to you, right? Ishtacha and your wife, and your wife and your 2 sons. Now, the pasuk is very lengthy and it's almost superfluous. For some reason, Yisro wanted to send a message ahead of time that he was coming, so he says this message. But it could have just said, first of all, and he said to Moshe, which Rashi says, it doesn't say it directly, it means he said it through a messenger, that I'm coming, right? All he needed to say is, in other words, if it would have been written the following, right? If it would have said, Vayomer el Moshe, he said to Moshe, Ani bo'elecha, I'm coming to you. He didn't have to say again, I, Yisro, your father-in-law. We're talking about Yisro. We know Yisro is Moshe's father-in-law. We know it said it a few times in the Pesach already. So what's this extra words? I, Yisro, your father-in-law, coming to you. And then I'm coming to you with your wives. We know he's coming with his wife and 2 kids. All very, very extra. So just a couple of things. One thing I have shared with you before, I just don't know where. So I'm not sure it was in the Parsha or somewhere else, but or maybe I did it in a shir on Shabbos. But just very briefly, and I'm not going to give the whole shir now because it's a completely different discussion, but it's got to do with a fascinating thing that the Arizal says about Gilgulim, about reincarnations. So very, very briefly, we know that at the very beginning of time, after Adam was created, he had 2 sons, Cain and Hevel. Right? Cain killed Hevel, and that sent his neshama into a very downward spiral spin, and the neshama needed a very big tikkun. Now, it says later in Bereshit, it says that when Hashem spoke to Cain and he told him he's going to be punished, and Cain said, but now everyone's going to kill me, and what am I going to do, and so on and so forth. So Hashem promised him that, those days they lived very, very long. So Hashem promised him that he would live for 7 generations and then be killed, right? So the pasuk says, Ki shivasayim yukam koyim. because for 7 generations Kain will exist. So the Arizal says that Yukam is an acronym for Yisro, Koirach, and Mitzri. Kain's neshama got reincarnated into 3 different people. The Arizal explains because the 3 levels of the neshama, each one had its own place, and its Gilgul and needs to be rectified. Essentially, it was reincarnated into the Egyptian that Moshe Rabbeinu killed when they was eating a Jew. It got reincarnated into Koirach and to Yisro. And then, those are 3 people that Moshe Rabbeinu interacted with. Who was Moshe Rabbeinu? Moshe Rabbeinu was the Gilgul of Hevel. Now, before it was the Gilgul of Hevel, however, what happened was, we see in the Chumash then, that it says that after Hevel was killed, there was a period of time in Bereshit that it says Adam and Chava actually separated because no one had children. They were scared that this is going to be the world and it's not going to work. Eventually they came back together, the whole story. And they had a son which was the substitute for Hevel because they called him Shais, Seth, Shais. Why? Because Shais means put. And they said Hashem placed another son instead of Hevel. Right? So what happened with Hevel was Hevel, and then he was the tzaddik, and then he was reincarnated into Shais. Shais was reincarnated into Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what the Rizal says. Moshe, the word Moshe is an acronym for Moshe, Shais, and Hevel. Right? Now, so each time that the neshama of Cain was there, it needed Moshe to interact with that neshama to bring it a tikkun in different ways. So when he killed the Mitzri, by the way, not through violence, but through the pronouncing the name of God, that was a tikkun that was rectifying the murder part of the aspect. Now, Korach was the aspect of jealousy. Korach didn't go with the tikkun. He could have not been jealous, but at the end of the day, he was jealous, so therefore he was swallowed up with the ground, but also into interaction with Moshe Rabbeinu. And what was the story with Yisro? So there's a very interesting part of the story, which is fascinating. So in the story of Cain and Hevel, on the surface, when you read the psukim in the beginning of Bereshis, what happens is that Cain is upset because his korban, his sacrifice, wasn't accepted. Okay, but there was something else there. There was a lot of jealousy there, and one of the jealousies came with the following. Now, this is a very difficult concept to understand, but this is the fact. We know that Adam and Chava were created. According to Torah, they were the first human beings. They were the only human beings. They had 2 sons, right? How did the world continue? So the Chazal tell us that each one was born with a twin sister, and that is in fact the meaning of the pasuk that Olam Chesed Yiboneh, that the world was built on kindness, and it was a kindness Hashem allowed. Essentially, it was an incestual relationship. But what happened was Hevel was born with 2 twins, and Cain was only born with 1. And Cain was jealous of Hevel. Cain wanted Hevel's twin, the one twin, and that was part of the jealousy that brought him to kill Hevel, so he could take that twin. That twin was reincarnated, says that Rizal, into Tzipora, Moshe Rabbeinu's wife. So Yisro was Cain, and Tzipora was that twin. When Moshe Rabbeinu married Tzipora, Hevel took back the twin, and that was the tikkun, that was the rectification for that concept that Cain wanted that twin. That's the case, says that Rizal, we can understand this pasuk. Have a look at the pasuk. Pasuk of Vayomer el Moshe. He said to Moshe, look inside. Ani chosencha Yisro. I am your father-in-law, Yisro. Take those 3 words. Ani chosencha Yisro. The Ani starts with the Aleph, chosencha with the Ches, Yisro with the Yud, makes the word Ochi. My brother. I'm your brother. Ani chosencha Yisro. That's why it's here in the pasuk extra. I'm your brother, boy elech, I'm coming to you. If it Ishtecha and your wife and your 2 sons, I'm bringing your wife, I'm giving back the twin. That's the pasuk. Isn't that amazing? Okay. That's one idea in this pasuk. Another idea I just heard yesterday, I'll tell you from who in a second, but there's a very strange Rashi here. Rashi says on the pasuk, I didn't copy the Rashi, but Rashi says on the pasuk, I'm your father-in-law Yisro, and then your wife and your 2 sons. Rashi says a funny thing. Rashi says, so I'm sending you a message that I'm coming. Come out to greet me. So Rashi says, if you don't come because of me, at least come for your wife. And if you don't come for your wife, at least come for your 2 children. So yesterday I was Rabbi Amar is in town. Rabbi Amar, who is the former chief rabbi of Israel. very, very big Talmud Chacham and a very beautiful speaker. So he spoke with the rabbis yesterday. So he said a Dvar Torah in the Parsha. So he brought this Rashi and he asked the following question. He said, what kind of business is this? It's like a father-in-law. He hasn't even spoken to Moshe Rabbeinu yet. He hasn't seen him for years. Right? He sends him a message that I'm coming. And almost like it's like a father-in-law thing that like before he's even seen him, he's starting a fight. Like he's saying, I'm coming. And if you don't want to come for me, at least come for your wife. At least come for your children. I mean, did he say anything? Did he say, no, he's not coming? What's the problem here? Right? So he explained the following. He said that Yisro essentially was coming to convert. Right? He's coming to convert. Yisro was one of the prototype Gerim in Jewish history. Yisro, Rus, etc. Gerus, conversion, is not so simple, halachically, right? In other words, really what's supposed to happen is a Beis Din, when they accept someone for conversion, they're supposed to test the commitment at some level, right? Are you for real? Do you really want to do this? Are you have ulterior motives? Are you interested in joining the Jewish nation? And so on and so forth, right? So he says this is what happened over here. Now, Yisro was a problem. So Yisro, in any modern day Beis Din for Gerus, Yisro would have raised red flags right away. Why? He was a priest, right? Like it's funny because today in the laws of Gerus, like we much quicker actually, because it's so like why would someone become Jewish, right? So although in theory, like converting for marriage is a bigger problem in a way, but actually we're much less suspicious of people that marry for marriage. At least we know why they want it. At least we want to know why they. At least we know why they're doing it, right? So they would say, okay, but you can't just be for marriage. It's got to be commitment. You got to take upon yourself, so on and so forth, right? But at least we know at least we understand why they want to do this, right? So it's less suspicious. If a guy comes and he's like out of the blue, and today it is like that, especially today. I mean, what they do when someone comes just out of the blue to convert, or family out of the blue to convert, you kind of say, well, hold on a second, why actually are you doing this? I mean, it could be anything. It could be missionaries. Who knows? It could be. I mean, it could be anything, right? I just tell you a funny story. He didn't say this yesterday, I just remember this. A few years ago, I was Shavuot in South Africa, and they had a big Shavuot dinner, and then after the program, and I spoke there, but so at the dinner, they had a guest speaker. Who was the guest speaker? He's a guy who's a fully religious family, and he's a convert, but he's a convert not for marriage, he's a convert. He was actually, as a teen, he was not only a non-Jew, not only a practicing religious non-Jew, he was in a convent. And then he questioned Christianity, and he sort of searched, and he found Yiddishkeit. And it was a whole long journey. But he told a funny story. He had a bit of a sense of humor. Also, he told a funny story that there's a rabbi there who, not a different rabbi now, but there's a rabbi there who was in charge of opening up the files of the potential converts, right? So he had to meet with this rabbi first. So when he made an appointment with the rabbi, so he came to the office, and the rabbi's sitting there, and on the other side of this, there's two chairs, because normally when someone comes for conversion, it's a boy and a girl. One of them wants to convert, right? So he kind of told me the story. So the rabbi looks at him and he says, looking at the empty chair, and he says to him, "There's no girlfriend?" He says, "Rabbi, I don't know what you think happens in a convent, but no, there's no girlfriend." Right. Anyway, so they gave him a rough time. They did. Right. So Yisro is coming. Yisro is Kohen Midyan. He's not just the priest. Rashi says, we're going to come back to it later, Rashi says he was like the chief priest. He was like well versed in Avodah Zarah. Right? He had served all kinds of pagan worship. But there's even a medrash that he was hesitant to give his daughter to Moshe Rabbeinu because of that. Right? And in fact he made a deal with Moshe Rabbeinu, which is a separate thing, which you mentioned yesterday. You have to understand how that works and how Moshe Rabbeinu could agree to such a deal. Because ultimately he knew that his wife would take care of it and it wouldn't happen. But he made a deal with Moshe Rabbeinu that the first son belongs to him. The first son is taken from Avodah Zarah. And the second son he can have. It was like a whole tension, right? Now all of a sudden he sends a message, "Hello, I'm coming to convert." Right? Suspicious, no? He's giving this all up, all Avodah Zarah, everything. So that's the message he sends to Moshe Rabbeinu. Come out to greet me, not come out to greet me like your father-in-law, come out to say hello. Come out and accept me, because I'm telling you I'm sincere, I'm giving this all up, I've understood what Hashem did for the Jewish people, and I want to join the Jewish people. Now, if you don't want to accept me, if you don't think I'm right, if you don't think I'm legit, so come for your wife. Because all these years you have to understand, I'll show you how committed I am. I didn't try to convince your wife, I didn't bring over your wife to Avodah Zarah. I let her be. I let her be your wife. And if you don't trust me even with that, come for your sons. Remember that deal I made with you that I would take you first, and I didn't. I didn't do it. So that's what he meant. He's not trying to start up with him like, you don't come for me, right? It's a Geirus issue. It's a conversion issue. He's saying, come and accept me because you can be sure of my sincerity. And I've got backup here. If you don't want to come for my sincerity, your wife is here. If you don't want to, your 2 children are part of the program. And that's how Moshe Rabbeinu sort of knew that this is okay. So that's just the way to explain that Rashi. Yep. Okay. Now, I want to share with you a whole concept to do with the first pasuk, famous pasuk, and I'm going to share with you a talk of the Rebbe on this. It's a little bit deep and complicated, but we'll manage, I think. So let's have a look at the first pasuk again, right? Very, very famous pasuk, very famous Rashi actually. It says, "Vayishma Yisro." Yisro heard, right? He heard. Kohen Midian, he was a priest of Midian, Chais Moshe, everything that Hashem did to Moshe Rabbeinu, Ul Yisrael Amma, into the Jewish people, his nation. Ki hoitzi Hashem es Yisrael Mitzrayim, that he had taken the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim. So Rashi says, don't know what Rashi did. No. So I should have copied the Rashi, which I didn't. Okay, Rashi says, if you look at the Rashi, you'll be able to see it if you can read the Rashi, but if not, I'll just one line, I'll translate it. Vayishma Yisro heard, says Rashi, Ma shmua shamo ba. What did he hear that made him come? Right? So what do you think the answer to that is? Well,
from other nations.
What did he hear? What specifically did he hear? Well, it's a strange question because actually the pasuk says what he heard. At the end it says he heard that Hashem took the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim. But Rashi doesn't say that. Rashi says, and it's based on a Mechilton and so on, Rashi says, what did Yisro hear that made him come? 2 things. Kriyas Yamsuf, the splitting of the Red Sea, Umulchemes Amalek, and the war of Amalek. Because at the end of last week's Parsha, we hear that Amalek attacked the Jewish people after the going out of Mitzrayim. So there are so many questions on this. First of all, what do you mean, what did he hear? It says in the pasuk what he heard. He heard about all the miracles, right? Second of all, if you're going to specify miracles, what are the 10 plagues? Right? Why specifically Kriyas Yamsuf, splitting of the sea, and the war of Amalek? Third of all, bigger question. What do you mean he heard about the war? You should say he heard about the splitting of the Red Sea and the victory over Amalek. That was the miracle. The miracle wasn't the war was a tragedy. They attacked. So what do you mean he heard Kriyas Yamsuf u'milchemes Amalek? You should say the victory over Amalek. Right? Many Mepharshim talk about this, but I'm going to share with you one idea. But let's take it. Let's go back first. So if you have a look at your handout, and we'll get a deep understanding of the whole story of Yisro through this. And remember, just when we did the psukim before, after Moshe Rabbeinu told, just have a look at it again. The next page, 396. Right. So after Moshe Rabbeinu took him to the tent and he gave him a detailed rundown of everything that had happened. By Yomer Yisro said, that's Pasuk Yud, verse 10, by Yomer Yisro, Baruch Hashem. Right? He blessed God for all the miracles and so on. Let's have a look at a Gemara. Okay, it's a Gemara in Sanhedrin. It's on your handout. We'll learn through it together. It's a Gemara, by the way, that talks about the whole concept. It's last week's Parsha about the Eden coming out of Egypt and singing Shira. They sang song after the miracles. And I think I mentioned this last week. There's a whole thing about Chizkiyahu HaMelech had this amazing miracle with Sancheiriv army, and he didn't sing Shira. He didn't sing song, right? So let's see what the Gemara says. Tana Mishum Rabbi Pius. We learned in the name of Rabbi Pius. Genaihu LeChizkiyahu V'Siyata. It was like a bit of not a criticism, like a blemish almost on Chizkiyahu and his supporters. Shalei Amru Shira, that they didn't sing Shira, right? Until he says, Ad shepascha ha'aretz v'amra shira. The land itself sang song. As it says, Shenamar miknaf ha'aretz zemira shamanu tzvi latzadik v'chulu. It says, from the uttermost part of the earth we have heard songs, glory to the righteous. In other words, it's in the Navi that so the earth had to sing a song, but Chizkiyahu HaMelech and his thing didn't sing. Okay. Then says the Gemara on a similar note, just this is the entry into this discussion. On a similar note says the Gemara, Kayotze b'dover ato omer, similarly we could say the following. In Parshas Yisro it says, Vayomer Yisro Baruch Hashem. Yisro said, blessed be Hashem, Asher Itzileschem, that he saved you. Tanu Mishum Rapapayis, so we learned the name of Rapapayis. Genaihu, it's a little bit of a blemish, like a bit of a shame. LeMoshe v'shishim ribui. Moshe Rabbeinu and the 600,000 Jews, Shaloi Omru Baruch, they didn't say Baruch. They didn't bless Hashem. Achaba Yisro, until Yisro had to come, v'Omar Baruch Hashem, and he said Baruch Hashem. Right? So obviously that's a very difficult thing to understand. The first part is much easier to understand. Chizkiyahu HaMelech didn't thank Hashem for the miracle. The Yidden did. Right? So the contrast of Chizkiyahu HaMelech not singing Shira versus the Jews that sang Shira, we understand that. That's quite contrast, right? But what's this connection, comparison between the Jewish people and Yisro? Well, Yisro said Baruch Hashem, and what did the Jews do? They sang Shira. They sang a song to Hashem. They thanked Hashem for the miracle. It's the wording? They didn't say Baruch Hashem. Well, you have to say Baruch Hashem specifically. Right? And by the way, it's interesting, as I mentioned before, we'll see it towards the end, the explanation. The term we use is Baruch Hashem, right? That's the Jewish phrase. Someone says, how are you? Baruch Hashem, I'm fine, right? We say Baruch Hashem for everything that happens. So we need to understand something special about this Baruch Hashem. What's so special about the formula? So much so that the Yisro is praised for having done it, almost in contrast to Moshe Rabbeinu and the entire Jewish nation who didn't say Baruch Hashem. Yeah? Okay, so he brings a Zohar. Zohar says on the pasuk that until Yisro came and thanked Hashem, praised Hashem with the Baruch Hashem, the Torah wasn't given to the Jewish people. When Yisro came, says the Zohar, and he said Baruch Hashem, that he saved him, and now I know that Hashem is greater than all other gods. He effected an unbelievable revelation in the world of Hashem, and then Hashem was able, in a perfect way, to give the Torah. Right? Which is also difficult to understand. You have Moshe, you have Aaron, you have 600,000 Jewish people, and everything they did wasn't sufficient. They go out of Mitzrayim, they had 10 plagues, they go through Kriyas Yamsuf, and it's still not ready for Matan Torah.
Wasn't there a debate whether Yisro came before or after?
Yeah, okay, so the Zohar holds that it came before Matan Torah. Yeah, it's a little bit different to Rashi's way of learning. Correct. Okay. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. I mentioned at the beginning there was a debate, but this is, that's the shit of the famous, it's opinion of the Zohar. The Yisro came before Rashi. I mean, according to Rashi, historically it makes more sense, but the truth is that, although chronologically it's not like, Rashi has reasons why he learns that it was after Matan Torah. The shocking part about Rashi's view is that Moshe Rabbeinu's wife and children weren't at Matan Torah. Right, which is quite amazing. But anyway, the Zohar learns that it was before Matan Torah. So this is what the Zohar says. So we'll go with that thing for this particular explanation, right? So he says that Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe and Aaron, the Jewish people, the 10 plagues, the Halav, nothing made the world ready for Matan Torah. Who does? Yisro. Why? Because Yisro say Baruch Hashem. What does this mean? So he says like this. Let's go back to the pasuk. And we brought this before, that says, Vayishma Yisro heard, Kohen Midyan. He was the Kohen of Midyan. Now, what does it mean he was the Kohen of Midyan? So he explains an unbelievable thing. He says like this. First of all, the word Kohen Midyan has two translations. Rashi elsewhere in Chumash says Kohen, the word Kohen means like an officer. So I mean, on the simple pshat really, it doesn't actually necessarily have to mean that he was an Oved Avodah Zarah, he was a pagan worshipper, it could just mean he was an important guy. The mayor of Midyan, which would have certainly highlighted his praise, because it means that he was a comfy guy, he had a perfect lifestyle, he ran the place, he was the officer there, it was important. So he came. He gave up everything and he came to convert and he came to join the Jewish nation. But we know the other pshat is that Kohen Midyan means that he was Kohen Midyan, like Rashi says later on, that he was a pagan worshipper, he was a priest of Midyan. And Rashi says, based on a medrash, Rashi says that what does it mean, Kohen Midian? He was the leading pagan worshipper. Why? Because Rashi has a phrase later, it says, Shoyo makir b'chol avodah zara sheba'olam. He recognized, he knew, he understood every pagan worship in the world. Meaning he wasn't just the guy that bowed down to idols. He was an academic. He understood avodah zara, right? So the Rebbe asked the question, why do we need both interpretations? Why would we want to highlight a criticism on Yisro? In other words, if we have an option to learn that Kohen Minyan just means a minister of the Minyan, he was an important guy, so isn't that good enough? Praises him, it highlights his strength, he left everything, he came to join Klal Yisrael. Why is it necessary to use the second pshat? Why do we have the second pshat altogether?
It means he made a different choice.
Different. Okay. But why is that so necessary? Or why is that so important for us to know? In other words, if we have two ways to look at a person, why would we go for it? Why would we go for the more detrimental one, kind of thing?
I don't think it's more detrimental.
Why?
The guy who's, okay, if you're a priest, that's what you know, so good, okay? There's the suspicion thing. But if you're an academic who's looked at a whole swathe of things, maybe really Judaism, then...
So that's the praise. Okay, so the Rebbe says a similar line, but it needs to be developed, to understand that. The way he frames the question is, pagan worshipper versus a minister, why don't we just choose a minister? And that highlights a very strong commitment because he's given up a comfortable life in order to join the Jewish people. So why don't we choose Dafka, the one of pagan worship? This is like this. First of all, what does it mean? What does this phrase mean? This is the Rebbe's view of here, that a very interesting interpretation. What does it mean that he understood every avodah zarah in the world? What does it actually mean? What he understood the Hindus and the Buddhas, what does that actually mean? See, here's a deeper pshat. We know the Rambam says that where did the mistake of pagan worship actually come from? Right? Pagan worship came from a legitimate mistake. What happened was, Hashem created the world, and at that time, Adam Arishan, I don't know if you're aware of this Rambam, it's a very interesting Rambam, it's a Rambam at the beginning of the laws of Avodah Zarah, so the Rambam has a whole introduction, a bit uncharacteristic of the Rambam, which is a halacha book, but in the laws of Avodah Zarah, in order for us to understand what Avodah Zarah means, he actually gives a whole introduction of the history of Avodah Zarah. Right? How did pagan worship come into being? We know when Hashem created the world, Adam and Chava recognized Hashem, and so did their children. I mean, they all knew Hashem. Even Cain recognized Hashem. Cain wasn't a pagan worshiper. He was someone who recognized Hashem's presence. He had jealousy. He was tempted. They sinned, but they weren't over the Avodah Zarah. They didn't survive. They didn't deny the existence of Hashem and the authority of Hashem. Right? What happened was, it's a mistake that came over time, and it's a mistake that evolved, says the Rambam. What happened? We know that Hashem created the creations down here, and He creates the creations in the heavens. What we call the Shemesh, the Yereach, the sun, the moon, and the Mazolis, and the constellations, the planets, the different forces, the different celestial beings, so to speak, right? And in truth, this is actually a truth, that Hashem sends His sustenance to the world. The way it actually happens is, it comes through the celestial beings. That's the way it happens, right? Hashem sends, like there's a malach for everything. And the planets and the mazoles, they all contribute to the way the world down here actually works. Now, initially, they understood very well this is nothing. All it is, it's a tool. In other words, what does it really mean? It means that the analogy, that's the way we understand it, even though we know that Hashem does send His sustenance to the world through different stages and different mediums and different things like malachim, constellations, planets, and so on and so forth, but it's what we call kegarzen biyad hachoytze. It's just like a hammer in the hands of a woodchopper, right? There's the hammer. In other words, when someone chops wood, he chooses to use a tool. The tool is the hammer, the axe, right? Does the axe have any authority, autonomy? Can axe make choices? Nothing. It's completely in the hands of the thing, right? Which is how the world works. Hashem chose to create the world in certain ways. He created certain tools. That's the tools He uses them to influence the way things grow and the way things work, etc., etc. Right? Like Chazal even tell us, even goes back to the Malachim. It says in Malachim or Mazolis, whatever these things mean, I'm not exactly sure myself, but the Gemara says, Ein lecha esev, there's no blade of grass that doesn't have a mazal or a malach up there somewhere commanding it to grow, which means everything has a specific way of living and everything's got its every nation has a malach, right? We know that Yaakov fought with the malach, that was the malach of Esav, and so on and so forth. So the mistake they made, says the Rambam, is that they started to think, well, if everything is coming through them, maybe they deserve some respect too. They're kind of like a bit middle management, so we should give them. They started to make a mistake. Well, maybe they have some choice. Maybe they have some say in the matter, like in an institution. So you have the big boss and you have the middle management. Middle management is subservient to the boss, but has some input. So it's maybe worth to sort of get on the right side of the middle manager also, right? And then that went and completely started to evolve more and more and more until they forgot about the boss and they just sort of thought, well, the whole source of and the whole source of our sustenance, the whole source of our life is the stars and the planets. Which is why if you find in the Gemara, and then of course it evolved even more to serving images and idols, and that also evolved from the planets because they need something tangible to sort of represent the forces above, and that's where it became from, right? Like in the Gemara, if you look at the Gemara when they refer to someone who serves idols, the word is akum. Akum. What does akum stand for? Oyved koichovim umazole. Someone who serves the stars and the constellations, right? That's the thing. Now, the Rebbe explains an interesting thing, that these intermediaries, so to speak, these seeming intermediaries between Hashem and us, which are all nothing, and they all don't have any authority whatsoever, the higher you go and the deeper you understand them, the more difficult it is not to make the mistake. Because there's the sun and the moon, the planets, then there's these different constellations which are above, then there's the angels, and in the angels themselves there's different levels until you get to what we call in Kabbalah the world of Atzilus, which is the spheres, the attributes, the chesed, the gvura, the tiferes, those forces that Hashem created to manifest Himself in. It's Hashem's world, it's Hashem's midas, right? And even then, after all this, we say we're not allowed to daven to any of these things. We're supposed to daven to Hashem Himself. When Hashem chooses to manifest Himself through the attribute of chesed, for example, chesed doesn't have any independent being. It's a manifestation of Hashem. That's all, right? When we say that Yisro was a Kohen Midyam, we're not actually trying to take away from his importance. First of all, it's actually evaluating and appreciating who Yisro really was on a wisdom level, on an academic level. He was Makir Kol Avodah Zarah Sheba'olam. He recognized every single Avodah Zarah in the world, which means, according to the way he explains here, he understood the whole thing, he understood till the very highest level. He understood how the Malachim work. He understood the whole thing. He had an unbelievable understanding of how the whole thing worked. The only problem was that deep chokhmah that he had, originally he used for the wrong way. And the conclusion he came was the Avodah Zarah conclusion. Right? Now, according to this, we can understand what the Zohar means. So in order to understand this, let's just have a look at a pasuk. It's on your handout. It's the bottom pasuk. It's a pasuk from Shlomo HaMelech, famous pasuk, which is understood simply on one level, but then Chassidus always explains it on a deeper level. It says like this: Shlomo HaMelech said in Koheles, and he says, "V'ra'isi ani, I saw, she'esh Yisro in lechochma min hasichlos, that wisdom has an advantage, is superior to foolishness, folly, right? Ki Yisro in ha'or min ha'choshech, like light over darkness." Yeah? So, on a very simple level, the pasuk is saying something very, very simple. Shlomo HaMelech says, I saw the greatness of wisdom over foolishness, and foolishness doesn't necessarily mean stupidity, it means wisdom being used in the wrong way, like Yisro did. Just like I saw the advantage of light over darkness. But the truth is, we don't need the wisdom of Shlomo to tell us this. I mean, every kid will know that light is better than dark, and that wisdom is better than stupidity. So in Chassidus, it translates it differently. Because you see, the word min can be translated in two ways. Right? The word min could be, I saw an advantage of chokhmah, min hasichos, chokhmah over foolishness. But the truth is, that min doesn't always mean that. Min means from. Oh. So Shlomo HaMelech saying, I saw an advantage of wisdom that came about from foolishness. It's a transformation of the foolishness into wisdom. Just as I saw an amazing depth of light, which is not light despite darkness, but is light from darkness. It's light that is transformed from darkness. Fine? What is this Parsha saying? Parsha saying that the greatest level of greatness is greatness that came from transformation. When you take something that's not great and you transform it into greatness that is much, much deeper and much higher, much greater than greatness on its own. Okay? Now, the truth is that is ultimately the purpose of Matan Torah. Right? The purpose of Matan Torah was, we know like this. Before Matan Torah, we've talked about this many times. It's a famous question that's asked in this week's Parsha. What was the greatness of Matan Torah? We know the Jews learned Torah before Matan Torah. Torah was around. There was a yeshiva in Mitzrayim. They always learned Torah. Torah was always available. Even mitzvahs were observed to some level before. So what was the greatness of Matan Torah? What happened in Matan Torah? So Matan Torah was the beginning of the whole mission of creation. What is the mission of creation? So it says in the Medrash that before Matan Torah was analogous to two nations. The Medrash gives an example, Syria and Rome, whatever, right? One's higher than the other, and there was this decree that they cannot meet. The ones on the lower level cannot go up the mountain, the ones on the mountain cannot go leg, and there was this just complete separation. So too, before Matan Torah, there was a complete separation between Hashem and the world, right? In other words, the greatness of Hashem was the greatness of Hashem, but it was independent, and it was a revelation of Hashem within Hashem, but it didn't combine with the world. That's why, for example, just to give you an example, we have this concept that before Matan Torah, it was not possible to take something worldly and turn it into Kedusha. Right? So we say that even when the Ovais, even when Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov kept mitzvahs, but the spirituality of the mitzvahs remained independent of the world. To give you an example of this, the Zohar, or in Kabbalah, it says that when Yaakov did the whole thing with the sticks, right, when he was reorganizing the sticks and so on, what he was really doing is he was doing a spiritual thing which is very similar to tefillin. Right? It was like the mitzvah of tefillin. But the sticks remain sticks. Why? Because the greatness of Hashem, the revelation of Hashem didn't permeate the physical world. There was a separation between heaven and earth. There was Shamayim was Shamayim, Eretz was Eretz. Right? Matan Torah, it says, Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai. Hashem came down to Har Sinai, and it says, Moshe al Elokim, and Moshe went up the mountain. In other words, there was the meeting between the world and Hashem, which is really the whole purpose of creation. The purpose of creation is transformation. To take something which is physical, to take something which is in the antithesis of Hashem, to take something which is Gashmi, which is physical, not only physical, but something which actually hides and conceals the existence of Hashem, and to transform it into godliness. Right? That's what it's all about. Now, in order to get there was a preparation needed. In other words, the Yidden left Mitzrayim, and they had to kind of move towards that concept. So I might have mentioned this last week. So when they came to Kriyas Yamsuf was a little bit a preview of Matan Torah. Why? Because Kriyas Yamsuf, the splitting of the Red Sea, was the beginning of the joining between heaven and earth. What do I mean by that? So one of the famous ideas of Kriyas Yamsuf is this. It's that the splitting of the sea represented, I think I said this last week, represented a spiritual revelation. Did I talk about the hidden worlds and the revealed worlds last week? I think I said it, right? The hidden worlds, the real worlds, the whole, yeah. Because what happened was, we have in Kabbalah something called Alma Diskasya and Alma Disgali, the hidden worlds and the revealed worlds. The hidden worlds represent the worlds which are hidden from us because they're too high. Like spiritual worlds, godly worlds that are beyond us, right? The revealed worlds are worlds that we see, the finite physical world, right? In this world, the dry land represents the revealed worlds, and the sea, which has in it a whole existence of its own. The Gemara says whatever you can find on earth, you can find in the sea, right? There's trees, there's plants, there's a whole world and there's a whole universe underneath the sea, but it's all hidden, it's all concealed. It represents the hidden worlds, it represents a much more spiritual world like water, which is hidden from us. What happened at Kriyas Yamsuf? Kriyas Yamsuf, there was the splitting of the sea. There was the revelation of the hidden worlds. But not just the revelation of the hidden worlds, it says that the Jewish people were able to go through the sea, dafka on dry land. Yabasha on dry land. In other words, the sea split and they were able to go through on dry land. What's the emphasis of dry land? Right? I think I said this last week, the famous thing we say on Pesach, we say, if Hashem had split the sea and not taken us through, Dayenu. So what's the point of splitting the sea then? So one of the interpretations, if he would have split the sea and not taken us out from dry land, it would have been seabed water, would have been muddy water. Right? Even today, you go to a beach, if the sea goes back, if there's low tide, it's not dry land, you can walk through it, but it's wet, right? No, over here was a double miracle. Hashem split the sea, and they walked in the ocean on dry land. What does that mean? So in Kabbalah it explains that's the combination between the hidden worlds and the revealed worlds. In other words, suddenly there was this meaning, there was a revelation of the hidden worlds, but that revelation wasn't independent somewhere else. In other words, they didn't have to leave the world for that. They didn't have to leave the revealed worlds. It was in this world. So that was the beginning of the combination, the beginning of the preview of Matan Torah. But it wasn't enough, and the world wasn't ready for Matan Torah. Why? Oh. See, here's an unbelievable idea. We know one of the things that happened at Matan Torah, at Yitzias Mitzrayim, when the Jews went out of Mitzrayim, Hashem took them out of Mitzrayim, He took them away from evil, right? So they ran out of Mitzrayim. What happened to Mitzrayim? Was Mitzrayim transformed? No. Right? Mitzrayim wasn't transformed. Mitzrayim remained Mitzrayim. That's why they kept on running after the Jewish people. Even with Kriyas Yamsuf, that there was a revelation where the revelation happened on dry land, but it only happened on dry land. See, dry land itself has two parts. There's a part of this world which is physical, finite, tangible, conceals godliness, but it's not the antithesis of godliness. It's not klippa, right? So, for example, it's like you take something kosher and you make a bracha on it, but it's kosher, but you can make a bracha because you can reveal it, but you can transform it, but it's already conducive to that, right? So Kriyas Yamsuf brought a meeting between heaven and earth, but not the part of earth which was still evil. It wasn't a complete transformation. How do we know that? Because right after Kriyas Yamsuf, Amalek attacks. So you had a meeting of heaven and earth, but Amalek's still around. Amalek wasn't transformed. Right? In other words, the Yidden were taken in this world, true, but they were taken to like almost an artificial existence where there is no evil, but not because evil has been transformed, but because they're away from the evil. Right? The proof of that is, right after Matan Torah, Amalek is still there. Amalek attacks. Right? Says the Pasuk, Vayishma Yisro. Yisro heard. What did he hear? He heard that the world is not ready for Matan Torah. That he's got a part to play that will bring about Matan Torah. What did he hear? He heard that there was Kriyas Yamsuf, says Rashi. He heard there was a splitting of the Red Sea. In other words, the process began. He heard that there was the meeting between the hidden worlds and the real worlds. But he also heard about Milchemes Amalek, the war of Amalek, not the victory of Amalek, the war of Amalek. He heard about the fact that Amalek could still attack. Amalek still attacks, so the transformation is not really happening properly. See, Yisro says it's my job. I've got to do it. Yisro, who was the wisest person of all of Avodah Zarah, he understood the depth of Avodah Zarah. Yet, what he had done was, he had misplaced that wisdom into idol worship on all levels, up to the highest level. And now this Kohen Midian, this priest of Midian, could take something which is the antithesis of Kedusha, and he could transform it to a true wisdom. The wisdom of connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which will become not as an independent thing, but will become as a transformation of his wisdom, which is foolishness, not wisdom, but academic foolishness. And transform it to Kedusha, says the Zohar. Now Matan Torah can happen. Now Matan Torah can really take place. Yeah? Comes along the Gemara and says like this. That's why Matan Torah couldn't happen. That's why it's a greatness of Yisro that he was the first one to say Baruch Hashem. What happened to Moshe Rabbeinu? They sang Shira. Baruch Hashem is different to Shira, which is a very important thing to know, by the way. The Baal Shem Tov taught us. When we make a bracha, it's a famous translation. and we say Baruch Hashem, what does it mean we bless Hashem? Hashem doesn't need our blessings, right? But we know that there's a very different translation in the word Baruch. I don't know if you're aware of this. Baruch comes in Gemara, in Mishnah, there's a concept where it talks about the mixing of fruits and kilayim and so on and so forth. There's a term, and also got to do with the orla, the fruits growing for the first 3 years and so on. There's a thing called hamarkiv eso'ilan. If someone grafts a tree means they used to have a thing where a tree would grow, then they would turn over a branch, draw it down, right? And combine it with another fruit. It's called harkova, to graft. Graft means to pull down the branch. So Chassidus always explains that the word baruch actually means to draw down. When you make a bracha, not blessing Hashem, but the true blessing of Hashem means like this. You're committing to baruch atah Hashem, that I'm going to bring Hashem down to this world. By making a bracha on the food, I'm going to bring Hashem into the food. I'm going to bring godliness into the world. So the word baruch actually means to draw down. Oh. So Yisro, the Yidden, go out of Mitzrayim. They have Kriyas Yamsuf. There's a meeting of Shemayim and Eretz, a meeting of heaven and earth. But Hashem hasn't properly come down to the world. Because there hasn't been that transformation. Yisro comes along, and he's the first one to really experience transformation. He says, Baruch Hashem. I'm bringing Hashem I'm transforming. I'm taking my wisdom, which was the wisdom of foolishness, and I'm turning it into the wisdom of Kedusha. I'm bringing Hashem into my wisdom. So the Zohar, until Yisro didn't say Baruch Hashem, Matan Torah couldn't happen. Only once Yisro said Baruch Hashem, which was really the beginning of the process of real transformation, then Hashem says, now we're ready for Matan Torah. Right? By the way, this concept of Baruch Hashem is a really important thing. That's why Baal Shem Tov taught that the importance of saying Baruch Hashem for physical blessings is so important. Right? Sometimes we say Baruch Hashem, we're learning well, davening well, that's nice. But when you say, but the real Baruch Hashem is when someone says, how's your health, how's your living? A person says Baruch Hashem, and not just gratitude, it's more than that. It's bringing Hashem into your life, into your physical life. Right? I'm saying it's a side point, but that's why the famous concept of Baal Shem Tov about the importance of saying Baruch Hashem for things that are purely physical. So the Rebbe ends of the Sikha by explaining the following. So this process really, and this is the Pshat in Yisro, this is the Pshat why it's Baruch Hashem, this is the Pshat why I heard Amalek and Kriyas Yamsuf, it all fits in there. But what you need to know is this is not just a story. It's a story that we live every single day. Because that's how the process has to happen. Every day is a Matan Torah. Because every day when we say the brachas on Torah, the morning brachas, we say Baruch Atah Hashem noisein ha-Torah. Not Hashem gave the Torah, Hashem is giving the Torah. Because the truth is, the process of going out of Egypt, which you know is a daily thing, and the process of Matan Torah has to be a daily occurrence. Until we get to Mashiach, it will be the ultimate transformation, right? What does it mean? Every day we get up, and the commitment has to be that we have to go out of ourselves, go out of our limitation, go out of Mitzrayim. How does it work? So it works, first Kriyas Yamsuf and then Yisro. That after we get up in the morning, we know, first of all, we have to actually experience Hashem away from the world. Like the Yidden in Kriyas Yamsuf. That's how we daven, and we learn first. Davening and learning, we talked about this many times, is a spiritual experience. Yes, it's a spiritual experience which we, as physical people, experience. It's part of the meeting of the physical and the spiritual, but it's more in a detached way. It's like the Yidden in Kriyas Yamsuf. The world is still there. We just combining Hashem and the world within ourselves. And then the Gemara says, once you're able to do that and you're really energized, in other words, it wasn't just the Kriyas Yamsuf was a mistake. Kriyas Yamsuf had to happen before Yisro. Right? So first you have to have the meeting of the physical and spiritual in a much more safe environment, in an energized environment, an environment where you're running away from what is bad. And then says the Gemara, once you're completely focused and you're completely infused with that combination, then you can leave the learning and leave the davening, go into the world and experience the world properly and experience transformation. And that's how it works every single day. The getting up in the morning, Tzis Mitzrayim, the Kriyas Yamsuf, and then the Yisro. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.